I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. Today, we're being joined by Steven Spellman, author of The Virus 2. Steven, welcome to the show.
How you doing, Paul?
I am doing great. You ready to get started?
Yeah, let's get it going.
All right, let's do it. Question number 1. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
I would tell them, I definitely would tell myself if I could go back to when I just began writing, to resist the urge to write what you think will sell over what you want to write. When I first began writing, it was a real struggle. Every sentence was, is the audience going to be able to relate to this? Is this going to make me money? And that made the job very, very difficult. It made it a job instead of a catharsis. And if I could give myself any advice or any fledgling author, it would be that. The people will be able to relate to what's the truth from you. They can perceive authenticity, and they can also perceive a ploy to make money. And books to make money are just not as good as books that come from your heart.
Excellent. Well, what do you feel is the hardest part about getting published?
I think besides the just getting published part, is maybe dealing with the emotional toll that rejections have on you. I've read about some authors that their first book, their first even attempt at writing was wildly successful. I haven't had that experience. So I think that would be it, because writing is great, it's fun, it could be a great catharsis to you in difficult times. But it's very hard to make it through the emotional toll that rejections can have, because they're going to come, because your writing may not be for everybody. It may not be for every set. And you got to keep writing even through the rejections and not take them personally. So I think that's a skill that needs to be learned first off, and I think that's the hardest thing. The questions of, well, maybe I'm not that good of a writer if nobody accepts my stuff right away.
And what do you mean exactly by rejection? I do want to get a little clarification on that, Steven.
Okay, like if you're trying to get published and you're sending your work out to agents and to publishing houses, inevitably, like I said, some writers I've heard of, their first foray into writing just nets them $1 million advance. But for most of us, it's going to take some time. It's going to take more than one book. It's going to take more than one season of writing. And when you send out to agents and the publishing houses, and they invariably tell you that this is not for us at this time, it's good, but it's not for us, or we wish you luck, but we'll be passing on this, that can take a toll on a writer if you're serious about getting published.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about the marketing side. Please share a marketing strategy that you have used in your book launch that has worked well.
Actually, book launches, professional book launches on Facebook, and author book signings. One I would like to suggest, maybe some fledgling authors haven't thought about. Most postal services have where you can mail to different districts where you live, different area codes, and it's pretty cheap. You can print up some type of advertisement for your book, and mail it to 100 to 1,000 mailboxes within your postal zone, and your post office will do that for not that much money, and that's good. But I found that the more personal approaches, like professional book launches and author book signings, are better, because word of mouth, I think, is always going to be better than like just social media, where if the person doesn't know you, they're much more likely to pay attention to someone they know that recommends you. And it's no telling who you can meet at an office, at a book signing, or with the right book launch when you interact with the actual people. And I think that type of advertisement is better than anything you could pay for.
You bring up a great point. One of the recurring themes in our podcast so far has been different authors talking about different tactics that they've used for book signings. And one thing I'd like to ask a little bit more about is this bulk plan that you mentioned about sending it to certain zip codes. How does that work? Because that's the first time I've heard about that in our show.
Yes, it's a little known fact. I didn't know about it, but I was scanning the horizon for any advertising outlet I could use, and I went to you get sometimes advertisements for lawyers and things in the mail, things that you didn't sign up for. They're just automatically sent to everybody in your district. So I thought, well, why couldn't I do that? And so I went up to my local post office and found out that they do that, that all post offices do that. It's a little bit more expensive for different zip codes, but it's a great way to get your stuff before people without having to put small advertisements on people's windshields or things in parking lots, which I did do that in the beginning of my career as well. But it's a really inventive way. I would advise anybody that does do that, when you go there and find out that this is a real thing and you get over the shock of it like I did, that you put out your best work, that you find you're a professional designer, and that the book that you're promoting is professionally edited. So that, because that's going to be people's first impression of you, whatever you send out. You send out postcards, pamphlets, the postal services, they charge different for pamphlets than they do for postcards, but neither one of them is thousands of dollars, especially for a zip code that might only have a few hundred people in it. And it's a really good way to just get your picture and your name and who you are before people, and to be guaranteed that they're going to see it because it's in their mail. It's much more likely they're going to look at it than maybe a passing advertisement on their social media site.
So as an example, if you were going to send it out to, let's say, 500 people in a certain zip code, what would that just cost ballpark, do you think?
Okay, the zip codes I was looking at was a couple thousand, I think, and consistent with what they told me about that. I think a 500-person zip code would maybe run you a couple $100. And you have to bring your own. You have to bring your own material, or the post office actually has some boilerplate things they can send for you, but they charge for that. But it's cheap enough, especially where I am, to just get postcards with your names on them, and maybe a book or a website, just something catchy. We went and solicited a designer for ours, and it came out pretty decent. It was just nice to see it in front of the people. Like I said, when I first found out about this, I was shocked. That's great, and it's so many other that, as well as so many other avenues out there that are just there if you don't accept the status quo, and just go out there looking without something hedging you in, as what people will and will not do. There's a lot of opportunities out there just like that.
Yeah, that's really cool. Thank you for sharing that. Let's talk about your favorite book. So what is your favorite book, and what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
Well, I don't know how original this answer is going to be, but my favorite book is actually the Bible. It's my favorite book for two reasons. For one, it is a spiritual document. That's not the side I'm talking up right now. But from another perspective, the Bible is a book of stories. It's really just a book of stories. Some of them have a central theme. At least one book in the Bible, the book of Esther, doesn't even mention God. So it's not, you don't have to be greatly religious to really get something out of it. But it's a book of stories, people's lives, a lot of times from their perception, from the perception of their friends. But a bird's eye view like you would get in short stories. And I'm sure many people don't often look at it like that, but if you ever read the Bible, it's actually just a collection of stories. And I love it for that. And also the other reason I love it, because the Bible taught me first before any other book, I'm very detailed in my writing. And that has always been the most difficult hurdle to get over for me, is what do you include? When you're crafting a scene, when you're explaining the motivation of a character, what do you include? The words have always come easy to me personally, but what to write, how not to overload your reader with information, and how not to give them so little information that they can't follow you. And the Bible taught me that you don't include every detail. You don't have to when you're writing a story. You include the focus points and maybe some set design, I call it. You could tell what's going on, give some perspective. But you don't have to include every detail, which makes it very good, because writing uniquely is suited to convey things emotionally, sometimes even better than pictures. Because a movie, when you see it, it's already an image being fed to you. But if I can write something well enough, I can coerce you into making an image yourself. And if I can coerce you into making an image yourself, you will remember it much more readily.
Storytelling 101.
Very good.
Excellent.
But yeah, those are the two great things that the Bible has taught me.
Thank you for that. And let me ask you, what is your favorite quote and why?
Okay, I actually have two for that. My first quote is an actual quote by a person. It's by Charles Dickens. It's in my email signature. It's at the end of all my emails. And a part of it says, whatever I've devoted myself to, I have devoted myself completely. In great aims and in small, I have always thoroughly been in earnest. That really sums up my life. Whatever my talent is, that will have to be decided by God or by the people that read my books. But the only thing I can say about myself is my main focus has always to be honest with myself. Because I understand when I first began to write, I was trying to make money. When that didn't happen, I had to find a new motivation to write. And I recognized that people respect honesty. So it had to go from I was trying to get rich to now I'm trying to actually contribute to my society, to the world I live in. And in order to do that, I must be honest with myself, because we all have some of the same things behind the facade of our religion, our skin color, our gender. We all share some things in common. And if I'm honest about the things going on inside me, I am guaranteed for people to be able to relate. But if I try to make money, I am not guaranteed to do that, because I don't know what to write that is guaranteed to make money. But I know how to be honest. So that gives me a relatable, something relatable that I know I can put out there, and at least a large portion of other people will look at that and be able to recognize it and understand it without me, oversaturating it with detail. The next quote, this is what I keep up on my computer as my screensaver. It's a picture of Ray Bradbury. He's one of the authors I look up to, and it says, "You should be writing." I don't know if that's a quote original to him, but it would be a quote I would advise any writer to put up your favorite writer or whatever you aspire to, and you should be writing, so that when you look at it, that can be ingrained in you. Not you should be thinking or you should be planning, you should be writing, because you can't get it right until you write it. So trying to get it right before you write it is going to be a very difficult task. But if you can remember one thing above else, is to write it and then get it right, and you'll have it in the correct order.
Excellent. Well, Steven, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. What is the best way for people to find you online?
You can find me at Amazon, on Facebook at Steven Spellman or Steven Spellman Books. I would especially advise Facebook, because my personal page is a good look into who I am. And as a writer, that's what I always look at with other writers. I read their books, but I want to know what they believe, what kind of person they are. And also, I have a StevenSpellmanBooks.com is my website. I have a beautiful wife that maintains that, and there's a lot of very good stuff up there. Some kind of like preliminary stuff for my next book's coming out, so you can see what's coming out. And I do got some exciting things coming out. And let me see, the Facebook, Steven Spellman Books. I also have a presence on Twitter and all other social media websites, but I've never been a big social media fanatic. So I would advise Facebook, Amazon, anywhere books are sold online, and also StevenSpellmanBooks.com.
All right, Steven. Well, thank you again for being a guest on the show, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how to get your book published with a proven system that works, grab a free copy of my book at getpublishedpodcast.com.